In my speech, I thought that I'd review Australia's record on the issues of peace and human rights. I think our record is pretty awful, and so I thought I'd start with our domestic record and then look at our international record. Domestically, I think our three primary human rights crises relate to climate change, asylum seekers, and Indigenous affairs. On climate change, before Tony Abbott was elected, both parties were officially committed to targets of reducing emissions by 5% by 2020. This target is grossly inadequate, and neither party planned to achieve even this target within Australia anyway. Since the election, Australia has gone further backwards on climate change. Our climate vandalism poses a threat of disaster not just for Australia, but for countries around the world, especially the most vulnerable people in the poorest countries. On asylum seekers, we should be frank. Australia's current policies are barbaric and cruel. We should properly blame both parties for this cruelty and the current state of offshore processing. And, as horrific as offshore processing is, we should always remember the lives lost and destroyed by onshore processing, and the crucial role our High Court has played in entrenching and legitimising our regime of mandatory indefinite detention. On Indigenous affairs, a useful index of our record here is the lack of interest in a report in The Australian years ago that, this is a quote, Aboriginal children are being taken from their parents in numbers much greater than the stolen generations. Given the recent launch of 2 royal commissions, we might think federal governments were interested in those kinds of things. However, the recommendations of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody remains ignored. That Royal Commission warned that there were so many Aboriginal deaths in custody because so many Aboriginal people were being taken into custody in the first place. It recommended reforms in the criminal justice system and addressing Aboriginal socio-economic disadvantage through a policy of self-determination. Australian governments, as we all know, have resolutely ignored and defied these recommendations. Aboriginal imprisonment rates have continually risen to the point where we now imprison Aboriginal men at a rate 5 times higher than South Africa jailed its black men during its apartheid years. Though all of the evidence supports embracing a policy of self-determination, both major parties have continued to treat the concept with scorn, most notably in their embrace of the intervention now called Stronger Futures. Looking overseas, Australia's record on peace and human rights is equally grim. Here I'll just review our record in the Middle East. When Kevin Rudd was our foreign minister, he was occasionally asked about the uprising in Bahrain, which was brutally repressed by its government. He responded with waffle about his concern, urging all sides to exercise restraint, and praised the Bahraini government for its moderation and its political progress. He openly praised our friends in Bahrain and bragged of our important relationship with them. Less than a month after the uprising began, Australia improved its relations with Bahrain and other Gulf governments. When the Egyptians rose up against Mubarak, Rudd bravely stood up for matters of principle. We must be first and foremost concerned, at times of great instability and violence on the streets in Cairo, about the well-being of Australians. Since the military coup against the democratically elected government of Egypt last year, the new military dictatorship has amassed a grisly record of atrocities. Human Rights Watch called the Egyptian military's massacre of unarmed protesters in August last year a crime against humanity, and estimated it was the largest such massacre ever, worse than even the Tiananmen Square massacre. What was Tony Abbott's response? He has congratulated President Sisi on the work that the new government of Egypt had done to crack down on the Muslim Brotherhood. He has repeatedly praised the new government for its legitimacy and the legitimacy of their judicial process. Abbott further claimed that Sisi is, this is a quote, someone who does get it when it comes to the ordinary norms of justice and decency. And there's a lot more quotes like that. I'm just going to move on. On Palestine, both of the major parties are indistinguishably awful. In January 2009, Julia Gillard, as acting Prime Minister, shamelessly refused to condemn the Israeli attack on Gaza. Her many services to the Israeli government were recognized with a richly deserved Jerusalem Prize in 2013, awarded by the World Zionist Federation and two major Australian Zionist organizations. Indeed. The current coalition government has decided to shift some UN General Assembly votes to be even more supportive of Australian violations of international law. Meanwhile, Senator George Brandis decided that East Jerusalem isn't occupied by Israel. We might recall that after Israel purportedly annexed East Jerusalem in 1967, Israel's justice minister admitted in a cabinet meeting that Israel had, again this is a quote, set about Jerusalem with our eyes open and contravened the Geneva Conventions in the most blatant way. During Israel's latest devastating attack on Gaza, which left over 2,000 dead, our government steadfastly refused to condemn what was being done until the US finally condemned an Israeli attack on a UN facility. Then Australia obediently followed suit and said how appalled it was. Kevin Rudd, when he was foreign minister, also spoke proudly of Australia's strong and long-standing relationship with Saudi Arabia. This strong relationship is bipartisan, although the Saudi government is one of the most oppressive governments on the planet. It imposes the death penalty on those who commit such terrible crimes as witchcraft, sorcery, apostasy, and adultery. Methods of execution in Saudi Arabia include public beheadings and crucifixion. It seems that not all beheadings are quite so shocking to our delicate Western sensibilities. And for those who think our concern with ISIS is with ISIS's ideology, Asad al-Bukhalil reminds us that the ideology of ISIS is indistinguishable from the ideology that has governed the Saudi regime since its founding. Which brings us to our new war on Iraq. It is important to understand the crucial role the West has played in the rise of ISIS, which is essentially a rerun of Afghanistan in the 80s. Back then, the West and its client states, particularly Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, backed a jihad in Afghanistan by Islamic extremists called the Mujahideen. And that jihad paved the way for the rise of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, which we later went to war with. Similarly, Al-Qaeda in Iraq was basically defeated a few years ago, but as Patrick Coburn observes, it was revived by the revolt of the Sunni in Syria. The West and its client states, particularly Qatar and Saudi Arabia, backed the jihad in Syria by extremist Islamists who quickly developed their own bloody record of atrocities. And again, we should stress the role of Saudi Arabia in the rise of ISIS and its crucial role in these issues. A WikiLeaks cable from 2009 showed Hillary Clinton acknowledge that, this is a quote, donors in Saudi Arabia constitute the most significant source of funding to Sunni terrorists worldwide. So how are we going to resist ISIS? One of Obama's crucial elements of his strategy against ISIS is to, he announced, to train forces to resist ISIS. And the day after his speech, the media reported that we were going to have training camps in Saudi Arabia to support moderate Syrian rebels. You know, what could possibly go wrong? So the other day, it was reported that 800 police launched anti-terrorism raids. They detained 15 people, and since then they've released 12 of them. And the worst allegation is that one of them planned to behead someone. So Abbott has identified the terrifying new threat that it may include someone with a phone and a knife. Now, even if you do need 800 cops to arrest 15 people, I don't know that a credible argument has been made why we need to invade Iraq to deal with the threat of someone with a phone and a knife. I just want to note why Al-Qaeda was defeated in Iraq. There was a poll in 2007 that found 100% of Iraqis regarded its attacks on civilians as unacceptable. Because it was so wildly unpopular, that's why it was basically defeated. It's worth looking at why it arose again, like why there's a new threat of ISIS. And I think we should turn to an unlikely source of wisdom, President George W. Bush. He, after his stupid comments about they hate us for our freedoms, he made a speech which was less dumb for a change. And he said, the policy of tolerating tyranny is a moral and strategic failure. That is, pursuing stability at the expense of liberty does not lead to peace. It leads to September the 11th, 2001. And what that means is, if we keep supporting brutal dictators, we may wind up with another 9/11. To put it more simply, no justice, no peace. As radical as it may sound, if we want peace, we may need to start supporting human rights. Thank you.